I'll be rewatching this film for sure. It will go into the I need to cry rotation. Tub of ice cream, full bitch made on a sofa, feel good tears movie.
Welcome back to Foreplay. This is the final movie of our Christmas arc. God knows when you're actually going to be seeing this, well after Christmas. But fortunately for you, this film that we're going to be talking about, Tokyo Godfathers, is enjoyable at any time of year. And also, it is definitely one of the more Christmassy Christmas movies that we saw, which is interesting because obviously it's a film made by Satoshi Kon, who's a Japanese anime director. And you guys finally get what you want, which is us talking about anime. So you win. You win finally.
Me talking about anime is what people wanted. Because obviously, look, I will say this. I don't know. I know Duncan and you obviously both have a background in this. This is like probably the one genre of film we're going to do on this podcast where I am definitely out of my depth and happy to admit that. But I will say I used to love anime back before it became sort of teenage protagonist with no social skills as the go-to. I kind of came up in the I kind of came up in that late 80s, mid 90s, and then I was out by the early noughties because I loved some of the earlier stuff. I mean, basically what happened was if you were a British kid and you were in the late 80s, early 90s, there was one night where Channel 4 showed Akira, and that was it. You were in on anime at that point because you just couldn't believe what the fuck you were seeing. And so for a lot of us, that was our gateway, to the medium. Unfortunately, I look at modern anime and I've tried them all. People recommend them from time to time. It's not that I'm like weeb resistant. I watched Attack on Titan and tapped out and stuff like that.
I tapped out on that one so fast, man.
Yeah, I know, right? So I'm and by the way, I never want to hear it gets good after 40 episodes.
There you go.
Yeah, fuck you. There it is, right? Fuck you. My time matters. I don't know about you guys, but my time. So anyway, but I will say what I loved about this immediately, and we'll probably talk about this. I knew that even though this came out in 2003, it felt immediately like that old anime style I liked. And when I looked into it and was doing my research for this episode, it was actually the animators that did one of my all-time favorites, Ninja Scroll. It's the same animation studio.
Oh, there's
so I was immediately sort of enchanted by this. It was like going back in time for me.
Yeah, and as far as films like Ninja Scroll and Akira go, I bet you at some point on this show we are going to have like 90s anime films because some of those are just ultra violent, great, very interesting classics. And
by the way, keep going.
Yeah, what's good about Tokyo Godfathers, by the way, is so I'm a huge Satoshi Kon fan, and I've seen everything he directed. He didn't have a big oeuvre because, unfortunately, he died of cancer very young in his 40s. But basically, all the films he's made, so like Millennium Actress, Perfect Blue, Paprika. These films, especially Millennium Actress and Perfect Blue, actually have had immense aesthetic impact on people like Darren Aronofsky later on, who actually have like stolen shots from some of these anime films. And he also did a lesser known.
He paid for the rights, but yeah, I know what you mean. Just colloquially,
yeah, colloquially, like he cribbed it because there were these beautiful
like
shots,
like Tarantino style. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And like Black Swan is potentially like based off of Satoshi Kon's work. So this guy has actually been hugely influential on numerous live action directors. And if you guys also have time, I would say go watch Paranoia Agent, which is a 13 episode series that he made, which is the only like series he directed. So this is all really good shit. And it not only was the studio, the Ninja Scroll studio that you're talking about, Richard, you also, if you were a Cowboy Bebop fan, the screenplay of this movie, Tokyo Godfather, was written by Keiko Nobumoto, who was one of the writers for Cowboy Bebop as well. So you actually get some really high quality. She also made Wolf's Rain and did work on Samurai Champloo and Space Dandy later on. She also, unfortunately, has died of cancer since then. So a lot of these people are no longer able to make these films.
Before Duncan jumps in terms of his output, probably I have seen all of his greatest hits. I mean, I remember Perfect Blue. From again, that was like for me the golden era of anime. I remember watching that back in the day. I'd seen this before, but totally fucking forgot it for some reason. Paprika, I went and watched. I went and watched when everybody was like, "Oh my god, Inception completely ripped this off."
Yeah. And they're all great. These are all great
and they were
films,
right, by
guys.
the way.
Yes, they were.
Yes,
I mean, literally, there's even shots in it that I just like it. Yeah, completely. No, by the way, I'll give my 2 cents on the genre in this sense because it's true. We haven't really addressed this, so people might know. It's funny that like people. Because I've recommended it then makes people think, oh, she does like it. It's like, no, I always tell people at the outset, I actually fundamentally don't like this genre because it is a genre, funny enough, like my actual profession, professional video games, that just became very cynically dialed down and watered down for fucking idiot 12-year-olds, literally 12-year-old kids. So my problem is like, Richard, if you give me something like Akira, by the way, basically is like The Matrix, but just animated. Like that doesn't even have very much lightheartedness to it. It's not a lot of frivolity. It's not a lot of silly jokes, and it's actually quite a serious movie. Essentially, this gets to what my actual problem with anime, the genre, is. It's a bit like my problem with comic books. I love comic books when I was a kid. Then when I became an adult, you like the ones that sort of have adult themes and address you like an adult. But part of you is just thinking what I remember Alan Moore said years ago, where he said it's like if you went into a library and you had all these books on the shelves, and then you asked them like, what are these books? And they were like, oh, 98% of them are about pirates. You'd be like, okay, but what if I'm not into pirates? And like, well, there's sort of 2% are about all this stuff like detectives. Well, that's the problem with comics that people don't know. They're all superheroes, even though, by the way, you can, as European and Japanese comics showed, you can make a comic about anything. It's just drawing. So my problem is, it's a brilliant concept. Like the idea of anime that's brilliant. It's why I like Satoshi Kon's work. Is he doesn't have to go and convince a Hollywood studio to give him a massive cast, $200 million, and the greatest like films, camera, all this expenses. No, you just get people who are the animation studios, which famously sort of work like a sweatshop, I'm afraid. They work very cheaply, and you just have to have the vision and a script writer. Sometimes it's the same person who does both like this. You direct and you script write. So actually, to me, it's a bit, if people know Jodorowsky did this, if you can't make movies traditionally, why not do an animated film? It doesn't have to be silly. And I actually think, in general, this is why it's so tragic Satoshi Kon died. His anime work is way more in my fucking alley than any of the shit. Like, basically, I'm not a Miyazaki fan. I find it incredibly saccharine. Some of them I can sort of take as sort of like a screensaver background movie to watch, like Porco Rosso or something, and just go, oh, whatever, turn your brain off. But I can't engage with like Princess Miyazaki and or what that fucking
Princess Mononoke.
Mononoke. I actually think that movie is shit. Actually shit. Like, I think the plot is dog shit. And I'm sorry, if you actually find that like incredibly emotionally moving and meaningful, I think you are 13 and haven't yet actually figured out what a personality is. Like, you're actually seeing one on screen and going, oh shit, if I was edgy like that, I'd be like, no, like, just wait until you grow up, mate. It'll be different.
I think Mononoke aged badly, but I do think that some Miyazaki's films have aged very well, like Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I agree. But Mononoke
Castle, that's trash as well. So my problem is this guy actually made real fucking films. Like the joke is, think of all the movies you're referencing. The reason why people make an obvious connection is those are very serious, well-loved movies. Think about it, right? So the scene Monty's referencing of where like the person like screams in the bath, that was in fucking Requiem for a Dream from Aronofsky. Black Swan basically copies the rest of Perfect Blue as a concept. By the way, these are all incredibly serious Western movies, like super Black Pill, Doomer movies. Like there's no frivolity and jokes and yucks, like people doing like a spicy like tears coming down. There's none of that in this movie. Fucking Inception. These are the best movies of all time, guys. So what this should tell you is this guy was working on a different level. There are other people like some of the ones Richard mentioned that also did serious, proper movies. I will know a lot of them relics of the past. But this is a guy where sadly, if he'd have continued, there could have been like a whole more adult version of anime. I feel like could have existed. And
we could have gotten
into this movie. One thing. Like you say about the animation style, I also think if you're someone who doesn't like cartoons, you're going to be able to handle this. It's not actually like over the top animation. Like even when it does things like hallucinatory, like fantastical things, it's done in sort of a very like palatable way, I found. Like one thing, for example, about this movie, by the way, the reason it's a brilliant Christmas movie is notice it doesn't have an insanely zany color scheme over the top palette. It's got a very sort of subdued palette. It's a lot of sort of like more darker colors and grays and browns, and the animation even tries to be a bit softer. I feel not so hard edged and stuff. So I found the whole thing, the aesthetic of this movie, I think is really good.
Yeah, and I was just gonna add. I mean, like when I was again researching this, I read some interviews, from Satoshi Kon, and the people he is saying who inspired his work when he talks about like his touchstones for like the type of projects he wants to do, his stories that he writes and stuff. Obviously, he talks about Otomo. I mean, everyone does if you're coming from that manga anime school. But he mentions Terry Gilliam like all the time,
right?
And
makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
And like Terry Gilliam is like, love him or hate his movies. Which, by the way, I don't know how anyone can hate his movies, but there are people who don't like him. I'm a huge fan. They are instantly recognizable.
Yes.
And they have this feel. And even when they're dealing with, keep in mind, like Terry Gilliam's idea of a movie for kids is Time Bandits.
Which, by the way, they're remaking into a series, by the way, which is terrible. I was just terrible, but I agree. Time Bandits
about that one I heard.
Time Bandits is fucked up, and that is his idea of a kids movie. I love that movie.
and obviously, I think as well in the same interview I read, he paid tribute to Kurosawa, and it's like, look, this is a guy. Anime is a genre that has been polluted by childishness, and it's turned a lot of its original Western fans off. Me being one of them. But there was none of that here in Satoshi Kon. I mean, what a fucking tragedy, because this was a guy who, the medium is irrelevant. He was just trying to make good adult films that explored quite complex issues, and this movie's no different.
Yeah,
and by the way, I would also say, as a last note on the director before we get into the film, of his films, even though he hasn't done many, the difference is loads of people have heard of Paprika. I would say like a solid amount of people have heard of Perfect Blue. Fuck all people ever talk about this film. And I also think Millennium Actress is the mega sleeper. If you've never seen that, that's actually just a bad... Again, if this was a real movie, by the way, made in the West with actors, that would be like a Lars von Trier movie or something like crazy, like fucking super intense. Like the problem really is the cartoon element. If you're just trained to think it means stupid little kid stuff, will just turn people off. So I feel like this is an example of one where essentially this is all to say, if you've previously judged anime as trash or maybe seen stuff like Bleach and you're like, this isn't for me, don't worry, that's not for me either. This movie's totally different.
Yeah. And before we get into the plot, I do have to say that we got so animated in the start of our conversation, I forgot to announce our next arc. I'm going to take this interlude very briefly to announce our next arc, which is going to be heist films. And of course, you've heard them talk about it for years. Could we do heist films without heat and having Richard and Thorin do the longest movie podcast of all time?
We're going to do them in character. Me and Duncan are going to discuss which one of us is going to be fucking Pacino and De Niro.
If you get me boxed in, then maybe I have to take you down.
To be fair, you can be De Niro. I don't mind being Pacino. Yeah, I'm fine.
So we are going to start with Heat. Then we're going to do the 90s remake of the Thomas Crown Affair, the Pierce Brosnan one. Then we're going to do Dog Day Afternoon, and we will end with Sneakers. So there you guys go. There's going to be our heist arc. Should be self-explanatory, and we'll see you. We'll see you for that when we get to the next episode. Now let's go back to Tokyo Godfathers, because this is it's a very interesting film. It is Satoshi Kon's, I would say, most normal film, because we've talked a lot about his other work, and what he does exceptionally well in his other films is that he really plays with the idea of reality a lot of the time. And this film is kind of his most down to earth, not trippy, no massive time shifts, jumping around to different dimensions or alternate realities, dreamscapes, everything like that. And it is set obviously in Tokyo, and the basic plot is that there are 3 homeless people, and I am going to use the word, I have to do this. I'm going to use the word homeless because I know it may not be the most politically correct term any longer, but that is literally the word that is used by the characters. That is the word they use for themselves. Even in Japanese, they use the English word homeless if you're watching the subbed version. Yeah. So I am going to use the word homeless here. And there are 3 homeless people, and they're at a Christmas Eve service, and they go and they find a baby that has been thrown out into the trash. And effectively, the rest of the movie is them. It's a kind of a character piece around the 3 characters interacting around this baby, trying to figure out what to do with it, going through multiple days, walking through Tokyo, encountering various people from their past. And I'm not going to go through all the individual character interactions, but effectively, they all run into people from their former lives before they were homeless in a series of coincidences, because really this movie is about strange coincidence and miraculous happenings around Christmas. And it goes for about a week until New Year's Day or right after New Year's, where they try and give this baby back. They kind of hunt down the alleged parents of this baby. It turns out the baby was actually stolen from a hospital by the people that they think who were the parents. And then the husband panicked and tried to return the baby without getting caught by putting it in the trash for somebody to find. And then the baby is eventually restored to the original parents. And then at the very end, of course, there's another miraculous coincidence where the teenage girl who is homeless then reunites with her father, who's a police investigator, as part of the kind of coming together of the return of the infant child.
Here's the thing, Monty. When you say that's different to his others, this really looks like Satoshi Kon sat down and said, as brilliant artists can do, I'm going to make a Christmas movie. Because as you say, it doesn't have the sci-fi, reality bending, perception, you're in your mind, or is this real, or is this... In fact, the joke is, even sort of the little flourishes, like I say, are not as much in this movie, and they're just more artistic, aesthetic things. They're not really supposed to be hallucinated somewhere. It's more here's a cool way to show you something. For example, if people don't know, the opening to this movie is mega iconic, where he uses all these signs to do the credits basically as he's showing. It's one of those clever ones where you're not sat watching the credits, you're watching the movie and the credits are happening in the background, which already I love when people can nail stuff like that. So the thing I'd say about this movie at the outset, because some of the topics, you're probably going to be shocked when I say this, is despite everything we are going to talk about, it is at its heart an incredibly wholesome film. What's funny is, I'll actually say one of the areas I want to make a demarcation on this movie is, you will hear that there are characters that maybe they're cross-dresser, maybe they are trans. This is kind of before the time when these things were labeled and characterized and public consciousness had any idea what they were. Basically, even though you have these elements within there, I'd actually say that doesn't in any way diminish it being wholesome, even though that might be classically, you're thinking of traditional values. No, I'd say even if you're from that world, by the way, there's an earnestness to these characters and the way it's done that won't make you get into the binary of politics, in my opinion. You won't have to think, well, but what do I think about I don't know, fucking gay people adopting a child? You don't. None of the modern day nonsense that you get tossed around on the waves of politics with have to matter here, because crucially to me, the heart of this movie is that it has a soul. What I find mega about this film is, like Monty says, essentially, here's what I like about it. It's not It's a Wonderful Life where at the end you have a big miracle. It's just a series of these Christmas miracles hitting you over and over again. And if you like Christmas movies like that and you want a feel-good sort of white pill moment, this movie's full of them. It's actually, like I said, it's just a really wholesome film. It's a really enjoyable one where you can, even though it has darkness, it has trauma. And in fact, a lot of it's about trauma and what causes people to potentially be homeless or do these things. What I find brilliant is it sort of manages to bring you the soul of almost every character in it. I feel like consider it's a cartoon in a Japanese cartoon. It's a very human film, I find.
And I think what's so amazing about this is that we have to understand the context of this film when it was made, because this is made in 2003. Now, let me tell you, many of the subjects which this film deals with are still very taboo subjects in Japan and kind of widely in East Asia today,
certainly in
20
Japan.
years later. So let's go through. I don't even know how this film got made, if I'm being honest with you, because homelessness, extremely taboo in Japan or in East Asia. Also, I found out by doing some research that 2003, when this movie came out, was actually the peak of homelessness in Japan. Which is very interesting. So at the time this movie was being made, the homeless problem was seen as like pretty severe in Japan. And so
think about it, Monty. In the movie, they show stuff like you just coming and beating the fuck out of someone who's homeless, and that's
terrible.
just taken as like, oh, whatever. That's just what happens in life, you know.
Yeah, it's terrible. And so my point is that the homelessness would have been a big would have been very conscientious within Japanese society when this film was released. And by the way, just anecdotally, I think it was 25,000 people were homeless in Japan in 2003, which is like less than just in LA County now by like half of what's in LA County now. So they've never.
If you actually, Monty.
Yeah.
Here's my question. One thing I feel like people won't be able to understand, so I want to ask you this is, if people understand like what those cultures are like, the reason why I think you have to hit this harder, mate. It's not just that like, oh, you're homeless. Like in America, people would go, you're a bum or get out the blue. Like they would think you don't have value then. No. In like an honor-based culture, like you'll notice this is a baked-in part of the plot. It's like the idea that to be homeless is incredibly shameful. It's shameful to your home family. You basically have like, it's almost like they imply like you've sort of like rejected like what life's supposed to be in society. So it's not just that you're a bum, you don't have the money. Like you're nobody. You actually, in fact, that's why, by the way, I can only imagine the effect this movie must have had, Monty. Because think about it, if you are someone who thinks of like a homeless person as a non-entity, you can't watch this film and think that. Like this film, like I say, reveals to you that even the joke is even some of the characters who do the objectively bad things in the film are shown to have like compelling reasons why they might do that suddenly make you rethink it. Like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that, but I never could imagine that could be the stressor that would push you to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, I think, seen as a sign because I can talk. I'm in Korea right now.
Do it.
My in-laws are Korean, and I'm not saying Korea and Japan are the same, but there's such a tight family structure, and basically, I think the implication if you're homeless is like your own family doesn't want to take care of you, so you must have done something that's really bad.
Yeah.
You must be truly
Here's what this movie
irredeemable.
This movie sort of tries to almost say you're right, but here's the reasons why. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, hold up.
Continue.
Yeah, I want to go into the other issues that this touches on too, which is LGBT issues in Japan. By the way, there's still no marriage in Japan, and we have a trans character in this. It is not illegal in Japan to discriminate against people in employment because of gender identity or sexual orientation. So basically, they can just freely discriminate against hiring you or maintaining your employment in these things. Same-sex parents, like same-sex couples can't adopt. So like really even, and this is all today, guys. So we're dealing with LGBT issues, homelessness, the Yakuza, foreign immigration, and Christianity in one movie. Now, Christianity is a very minor religion in Japan and was historically in Japan, especially during, like the Tokugawa shogunate, was actively kept out of Japan. It's one of the reasons why they shut their borders and kept all the missionaries out. Like, because they were trying to protect their culture. So we have all these things that, are very, each one individually is like pretty controversial to talk about in Japan. And to slam all of these together into one film and have that be the whole film, I cannot believe this guy in a feel-good movie, which, by the way, shows how fucking masterful Satoshi Kon is. Because he's like, should I pick one dangerous topic? What if I just picked all of the dangerous topics and then made you love it? I mean, that is a masterstroke.
So when I was researching this, the first thing, just to touch on the homelessness, what I love about the story of this movie and the way that it is written, Satoshi Kon said in an interview, it was something along the lines of like, a home is a building. These people didn't lose a home, they lost their families. That's like incredibly profound and potent a statement. It's someone that's like done like a ton of voluntary work with the homeless, in Birmingham, and we've got a real problem here. It's like, yeah, it's very easy. Like society sort of gives you permission to look at these people as others, at a time when we're becoming incredibly progressive and thoughtful about how we interact with other people that are different to us. Homelessness is sort of the like, well, there's this tacit coding. They must have done something. They've slipped through the cracks. They made bad choices. We give ourselves permission to kind of like look the other way on the topic when these are people. And Jin is a real character, like no bullshit. I've talked to people who have that story. Now, what happened with Jin in the movie is he talks about it. He, got into medical debt, which is a problem in Japan and America. He got into medical debt and lost a child because he couldn't support his family. And lost a child, and then the wife, went as well. And at that
that
point,
was his lie, about what happened.
Yeah.
That was his lie.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to throw the twist in, but when he delivers that monologue about it, that is the reality, for a lot of people, that they just tap out. I can't do this anymore. I lost a child. I don't want to be part of this. And so when I was like watching this film, I mean, it's very baked. Like, immediately that what Satoshi Kon is doing with these characters is he has created a sort of family unit from non-typical people that would make up the family unit. He's got a homeless drunk, a cross-dressing / trans. We can argue about the coding on that. I know the convention now is to say trans, but
it's almost implied by the character. Maybe it's more on the cross-dressing side, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of on the line.
It depends. It depends what you watch, actually, because if you watch a dub, which I don't do dub anime, but if you watch a dub, actually, it's all sort of. The modern sensibility is that they are trans. And by the way, this was a problem at the turn of the century that people might not be aware of. Some of our younger audience, there was this kind of like the interchangeability of transgender and transvestite. We hadn't really got to a sort of educated place to sort of know the difference, and you see that in a lot of the media. And indeed, a lot of people think this movie is transphobic because it falls into a very typical trope at the time, which is Hannah, the trans character. When she wants to be feminine, she speaks in a feminine voice, but when she needs to be intimidating, suddenly the masculine comes out. And they don't do that in the dub, and they do that in the original. So, make of that what you will. I'm not going to talk too much about that because it's not really my thing. But anyway, the point is that we've created a family unit, and a strange child has gravitated towards a trans woman and a homeless alcoholic guy. And even though they say terrible things to each other, including homophobic slurs within the first 2 minutes of the movie, just preparing your little Zoomer brains for that one, they're a family. And it's very real, and it's very authentic, and there's no hate. There's no malice in Jin, even when he's using pejoratives. And so and this is literally what happens on the streets. Like, people who are regularly homeless that go to the same places, they do form communities. They do know each. Again, you don't hear about this. This movie is so sweet and well-informed. It blew me away watching this as an adult, actually, like a real adult, not like you a 20-something adult. I was very touched by this movie.
Along those lines, mate, that was something I was even going to say. It's like, to me, the way you summarize this movie is it's about the meaning of what family is. That's why that quote's a brilliant one, because obviously it isn't just having a home. Like, the literal fact you're homeless isn't even the worst part of their lives, even though that's what you would think as the outsider. It's that they don't have their wife, their dad, their whatever, whatever, the mother, their relationship with their support network, and they've had to make this fucked up makeshift one. And what I love about this film as well is it's a warts and all film. It's not feel good in the sense of like American saccharine, like, oh, everything's just great, and actually you just totally misjudged all this. Oh no, they make sure you know within the first like half an hour or something that between these characters, one of them stinks, one of them's a drunk, and they're all just fucked up in some way. And they all, by the way, they're also all lying about their past and not telling you the truth, and they're all themselves seemingly psychologically running away from the past and the truth of what's happened to them, and all just trying to believe themselves. And by the way, they even themselves, you'll notice, buy into all this stuff. Yeah, I am just trash, and I am just a throwaway, and I'll never have a family. It's like this. It's movie's so real. It's why I say the genius of the film to me is you take the reality of being homeless, and then because it's a movie which allows us to imagine what could be, you sprinkle Christmas miracles in that make it somehow actually have a cool ending without being stupid. It's actually quite a cool way they do the ending.
And just quickly on that note, what is also incredibly accurate, like, what does it say about shame and the power of shame that, because now Monty's throwing a spoiler in, that Jin would lie about his past like that? Like, you would rather create a world where your family was dead rather than acknowledge your failure, your perceived failure as a father. Like, there is something in that story in and of itself that is so fucking authentic.
Yeah.
It's like I said, the script for the, but and this was another thing. I'll Christopher, definitely jump in now. Sorry, I've been talking too much, but the I've seen this trend of animes being remade as live action movies, and they really suffer for it. This is one. If you made this as a live action drama, it would be an Oscar winner. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It is. There's elements of farce in the movie. It is a farce in a broader sense, but there is some unbelievable authenticity to this that it's hard to believe that you could write something like this just out of a curiosity. Like, which apparently Satoshi Kon, he's never been homeless, doesn't know anything really about homelessness, he was just curious about the lives of homeless people and started like investigating it and came up with this. And it's like, it's so unbelievably, it feels real. It feels like
it's Richard. What you're saying there about like it would win an Oscar. I even had a line I wrote down like this when I was watching it. I said, without any of the frivolous and jokey elements and the lightness that's just sprinkled in, this could just be like a fucking art house movie from France that would like everyone would rave about and be like, oh, it's incredible what it says about the human condition and spirit. But the thing is, because it's anime, people that just don't have the right, they have like the preconceived notions, and they have a kind of goggles on when they're watching it, so maybe they won't get that. But I agree. I think this actually would translate fantastically.
Yeah. So the other thing, just quickly, Christopher's left a pause there, so I'll pop back in. The issue of transphobia, just to kind of quickly get that out the way the story breaks down is I don't think you could realistically see this as transphobic, and just sort of a callback to our previous episode when we had the discussion about whether Charlton Heston in Brownface in Touch of Evil was so racist that eclipsed the nominal good that the movie achieved by having a Hispanic protagonist being the moral center of a movie. And the idea that you could ever frame someone like Orson Welles as, not a lefty, not a progressive for his time is absurd. I think there's a similar reading with this film in the sense that Hannah does get called homophobic slurs by Jin. Hannah is sort of played for laughs in some periods. There's not a lot of sensitivity to the this is typical for the time, to the trans identity. And again, it's not even really clear whether we're talking about someone who is transgender or a drag queen, or, we're not really exploring that per se. But what I will say is that think about that as a taboo for its time in Japan, and Hannah is the hero or heroine, I should say.
I mean, she essentially is the stand-in mother in this movie, and constantly is the one that's always concerned about the well-being of the child. Like that's why, by the way, that whole topic, without going into a whole thing, I'll just say this: this is why when you talk to a human being, not just label someone the other, you try to understand what their intent is when they speak to you. The purpose of language is to communicate an idea from your brain into their brain, not to go, well, I'm going to stop and not try and understand what your intent is and just say, I'm going to take the most uncharitable reading out. You know what? You're the cunt then. You're just the cunt. It doesn't matter what denomination you're from. It doesn't matter what you've done. You're just a horrible person. Because like I said at the beginning, mate, if you can watch this movie and at the end, all you do is come out with a list of no words, you didn't get the movie. The humanity, it never reached the humanity in you. I'll tell you that right now, because that's the part I can't imagine. As I said earlier, I actually think the real joke is this. This movie's a perfect example of why othering people doesn't work, which you would think that fucking community should be able to understand as a basic concept, right? Because this is the movie you would show someone if you wanted to win them over, you idiot. It's not the movie you want to censor. Like I said, the joke here is this even could potentially have actually influenced Japanese people who watch this to be like, oh, I would have never even seen that perspective. And it gives like a whole different essence to the character. Like, I actually think this movie, it's like you're saying about that example, right? If we were to add up the good and the bad and do some scales, like, mate, the good just does this. Like, there's not even, I don't even see the need to have like a lot of criticism about that shit from what a guy did in 2003 by 2024's morals. Like, what's even the point? That's almost like some shit YouTube meta commentary at that point in time. By the way, I'll tell you what'll age worse: the meta commentary now in 2024 about the gender stuff here than the fucking movie. In 20 years, this movie will still be a banger. That'll be dog shit. That'll be what's just like a 4chan green post. But that's what it'll feel like in 20 years, guys. This movie, I think you nailed it, mate. If you're prodding and trying to find like the malice in this, you won't find it. You won't find it, mate. You won't find it anywhere.
There is no malice in it.
Yeah, it's also that individuals have nuance, right? And like, you know, we understand a lot about Hana's character because of what Hana says about herself, which is like, she starts off the movie saying, I feel like I was born with the soul of a woman. Like, literally just comes out and says that, and is working or has worked in the past as a drag entertainer and decides to basically permanently wear drag. And also, interestingly, I found out that the voice actor that they got to play Hana is a man who did drag entertainment. So actually somebody who did that.
In the English dub, as I said, they actually got a trans actress and a trans activist actress to do the dub, which is why some of the delivery is changed. But I will also just add this: to not understand how incredibly progressive it is. What is the one thing that a transphobe would attack a transgender, a male female transgender person over, would be the womanhood, the femininity. And Hannah says, I feel like I'm a woman. I would love to have a child. And, you know, that Jin is kind of like, yeah, you fucking, you know, what are you talking about? And she gets her Christmas wish of being able to be a mother. And as I said, it's the heroine of the film, and it's the mothering one, and it's, you know, always looking after the baby, always feeding the baby, like it's, you know, and it's like, that is like an incredibly potent message that actually would kind of, it would strike out one of the big transphobic attacks, right? So it's like, it's checks and balances. Like, the story is delivered in a world that feels real, and Jin does say some awful things.
Yeah, but characters,
which obviously would be what the time would be like in Japan. Like, think about that's. I'll bring the same thing back again that I made on the point about the Touch of Evil one. Why the fuck would a film in 2003 from Japan have a character who represents the everyday Japanese businessman who's ruined his own life and family, then turn around and go, here's a bunch of talking points from Motherboard in 2023. Like, guys, you aren't even in reality. Like, even in art, that wouldn't make sense. Like, that's the best example of why it's silly to use this lens. Like, you can't use today's lens.
It's also art in the fact that it doesn't matter what Gin says to her, because Gin's a character who is representing societal values at the time, and like, it matters how the film treats the character, and the film treats Hana incredibly sympathetically and really fleshes out her character. She's not some, you know, she is a cartoon, but she's not a cartoon in terms of the way we would anecdotally use that word to be a two-dimensional character, right? The character's very fleshed out. So just because people say mean things in a film doesn't mean the film is bad. It could be the artist trying to prove a point about those very things that are said. So anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, I agree. Look, so the next topic then, obviously, I guess, I just want to talk a little bit about the comedy in the film. Because I said, I think ostensibly, this has real broad elements of farce. It's got one of the key components to a farce is you have completely unbelievable coincidences, and that happens consistently
non-stop in this film.
Yeah, non-stop.
The film is essentially happenstance / fortune.
Well, I think what's so funny about this is normally you complain about Deus Ex Machina, but this film is just one giant series of Deus Ex Machinas, but because it just happens every single time, you just forgive it, and it's
a Christmas movie, guys. The whole purpose. I don't want to spoil anyone. It's not real. I know it's the last movie. It's not real. It was always imagination. So you have to sort of let your suspension of disbelief up with a Christmas movie. For fuck's sake, you know. I mean, by the way, you could just be an actual Grinch like that would never happen in real. No, you can do that too. But I feel like this is the one moment you check the fucking suspension of disbelief. Surely
there is a passage in this movie that does feel like a fucking fever dream, and it sort of starts with when they find the Yakuza boss trapped under the car. Then they get invited to the Yakuza boss's wedding, and there's an assassination attempt on him, which the guy that, by the way, I've been calling him Jin because I'm an alcoholic, but if it is Geen, I apologize to all the Japanese viewers out there. I'm just an uncultured fucking Westerner. But like the Geen sees somebody at the wedding that he blames for the lie he's telling about his life, and then he says, I'm gonna kill him, and then just at that moment, an assassin attempts to kill the Yakuza boss, and the guy that Geen is gonna kill, Jin is gonna kill, jumps in front of the bullets and dies, and I'm just like, what is happening in this film right now? This is mental. Like, you can't. I don't know. Maybe you can watch this stoned. Duncan will have a better idea about that. But I was like, holy shit! Like, I gotta dial in. Like, this movie is fucking crazy right now.
Oh, by the way, I will also say as well, I actually think that's an area that maybe will get lost as well. This is how you know it's a film for adults, or maybe just say serious film. It's not just like supposedly intentionally frivolous and surface level. Is they don't hit you over the head, by the way, with all these storylines. At the end of each storyline, they do tell you, like, oh, so that was your like father and he was a cop. No, but that's at the end of it. Like, before that, they tease these things. They give you like little hints of it, or they show you a little something, or they don't explicitly verbalize what's going on. So I actually think even the way those threads start to like weave together is quite interestingly done. Because I agree, in isolation, the joke is if this isn't a Christmas movie, then people would actually say that the plot is very hacky. Like, you are just going from one ridiculous coincidence to another, and each one coincidentally, teases apart what happened to you, and then with a real life thing happening now that mirrors it, and then you have to play it. But because it's a Christmas movie, and once you get that that's the roller coaster you're on, I agree, Monty. You're not complaining at any of these stations as you pass them. It's part of the ride.
I also think that it just being animated helps with that suspension of disbelief, because you guys talk about this being a traditional live action film, and I think the medium of animation helps this film a lot because it helps you buy in so much faster to that suspension of disbelief, and it also provides a lot of the kind of more humorous elements because it makes the characters much more expressive at times when the comedy is going on, and I think it's very effective.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way that it builds up as well, it like really lures you into a kind of like a false sense of security because, like, there's some laugh out loud funny moments. There are these broad elements of farce, and then the final third of this film. Like, oh shit.
Oh, let me give you a couple of highlights. So think about this. Even though I agree, some of the other parts sometimes are intentionally silly, or it's just like, wow. There's a scene where homeless people are just beaten for fun by young kids. Not even implied, by the way. They're just like just random kids just walk around. There's a scene where someone tries to potentially commit suicide, and or someone with a baby. By the way, the central baby of the plot. Like, there's some mega darkness in this film. But what I'm amazed by is every time they manage to pull you back out again, it's incredible. You never fully go to the depth of Black Pill. You always get sort of pulled back out by the quality of it.
I mean, the baby that they're finding, just as to discuss how dark this is, because when you articulate it, it sounds so fucked up. So I didn't even get it into the other things this movie deals with. This movie also deals with prostitution and sex work, which also not something you talk about in Japan.
No,
is it there?
No.
Yeah, it's there. But like, again, so that's another aspect of that this film touches on directly. And the person that they think is the mother of this child was a sex worker, right? And they found out that she got pregnant and then eventually lost the baby as part of a miscarriage or some other accident.
Because crucially, she decided she was going to keep the baby because she thought it would help with the marriage she was in or something, right? Like
about that, yeah.
If I read that right, she wanted to have the child because her marriage was a little bit shaky. I don't know. There was like some line about that.
Right. And so she loses the baby that she wants, goes crazy, kidnaps this other baby, and by the end of the film gets the baby back because the trio of central characters return this baby to her thinking that it was hers and not that she stole it from a hospital. And then she attempts to commit suicide with the baby. So, I mean, this is like fucked up. It's very fucked up.
Like, oh, fucking.
And it has a feel-good ending. Like, think about that. It has a feel-good ending. That's crazy.
A lump in my throat, dude, for real, because, you know, I'm a pussy with films. You know, like, when she's about to commit fucking Minecraft, you know, the husband's there. There's a gathering of police. It's like a very public thing. Japanese, you know, we know it's one of the highest percentage nations for suicide, and again, it's still a taboo kind of talk about. And she's saying, you know, I'm gonna kill myself. I just want to be reborn. I want a do-over, because she's gone through so much trauma. And the husband, who was initially rejected her and broke her, is there saying, no, like, let's start over. We'll be reborn together. And she goes, I'll go first. And she fucking jumps off the building. Like, fuck me, dude. I wasn't ready for them feels at fucking midnight.
By the way, notice how that is also an underlying theme about the movie, which says something about Japanese culture. And I'm not from Japanese culture. I wouldn't pretend to know a lot. I'm intuiting it from films like these. So in this film, essentially, one of the central themes with all these characters is the idea that because their honor-based culture is so strictly defined, they think once they no longer fit those categories or that unit, that they are just the other. They're just done. Their life's over. And the stupid mistake they all make, you'll notice, that they all have to learn, is that actually other people weren't enforcing that as harshly as they think. The best example is the young girl. The young girl thinks she can never be with her family again because of one incident that's gone really badly with the father. And the joke, as you'll see in the movie, is the father clearly desperately wants to get in contact with this girl again and have her come home. And it's also, by the way, alluding to that aspect of like when people go against their family. If people don't know, by the way, I'll tie this in again, even though, yes, again, Korea and Japan are not the same. They have similarities, though, in the same way as England and Germany's history have similar ways of culture, etc. So what I would say is, if you don't know, in Korean esports, the world me and Monty have occupied a lot of time, I've always told people, don't ever do that gross thing where you make it sound like their culture promoted being a pro, and so they all became pros. Half of these people have to run away from home and shit like that, mate, or be disowned by their family, and essentially they know it's all in on esports now, or I might just be like this, I might just be a nobody, or I might even end up homeless. So the stakes are so much higher with these sorts of like things. Like, you think about in the West, everyone knows, dude, Richard will know this, in the UK, we even had a famous commercial where it was like a kid telling his mom and dad, like, I want to leave home. And so they do that thing that they actually would do in the West. Like, oh, we'll pack your bags for you and put you on the corner. And then the joke is, obviously, then the dad just says to the kid, like, come on, do you want to just go in? And then he goes like, yeah, and I can't remember what it was for. It was some like family-related business or something. The idea in the West is we joke about that idea of like, oh, we'll run away then if you want to, because we know it's like not a big deal and we would forgive them, etc. This is defining shit here. So I also think the other thing that I found so interesting was that detail. Like, I find actually the ending with the father, even though it's like thrown in at the end, that's mega touching when that happens, mega poignant, because it kind of shows like, actually, there's another thing I think people do, sadly, when they get fucked up by trauma. They themselves live with it all the time. So they think everyone else is like obsessed with that aspect. But as you see here, the joke is, if this was a Western movie, the father would just tell, like, we don't care about any of that stuff, just come home. Like, that's all we really care about.
Well, I mean,
the family was always there.
we haven't talked about Miyuki.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I again, like, I don't know how old she's meant to be in this. I don't think it's explicitly said.
She's a
I just assumed she
teenager.
was like 13 or something. I was trying to guess,
Yeah, yeah. But I will tell you, as somebody that's, again, worked in esports and the idea of the teenage runaway that thinks they can't go back, and their family, while maybe they were initially monstrous, the absence of a child has made them realize, like, no, actually we need to do better. And seeing that kind of bridge building as the younger person transitions into adulthood, I've seen that so many times. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it. And it's it's the saddest thing, I think, when, like, over something ultimately trivial, parents would reject their own kids, or kids would feel that they can't connect to their family anymore. And for real, like, there's a realness again baked into this, where it's like, Miyuki's character, like, is like, I'm a disgrace. I can't go back. But at the end, and again, it's like literally the last scene of the movie, her father's just like, beaming to see her again, and glad that this chain of happenstance is reconnected.
By the way, that's even, I think, one of the themes of the movie as well. It is the one who's going to commit suicide was fundamentally wrong, in the sense that she thought it was over, and you can never. The joke is you don't have to start over; it can always be redeemed. The movie essentially implies everyone can be redeemed.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
and this is the Christmas theme. I'm going to go.
Why they picked them.
Yeah. So I want to go on this because, like, I'm going to go on a monologue for a while about what I think the Christmas themes are, and one of the things that I really like about anime and any Japanese interpretation of Christianity is that, because most of these people are coming from the lens of not being Christian, so it is something that they kind of take and look at themselves, and you see a lot of Christian imagery in Japanese fiction. And so, like, they have some very astute observations because they haven't been, like, steeped in it. You know what I mean? So they're kind of oftentimes encountering it as adults and, like, really thinking about it in a way that if you've been raised on Christian tradition, you may not have that same level of reflection. And so, weird to have a Japanese Christmas movie, first off. But there's the obvious parallels are to the Three Magi with the baby, right? Encountering the child for the first time. There is that element to the story. And also going back to the idea of miracles. But the whole point of Christmas is the birth of Jesus Christ, who is ultimately going to redeem people from their sins. But what I would say this movie is actually saying is not that there is some exterior force that is redeeming people from their sins. Because if we think about the sins of the main characters, to your point, Richard, a lot of this stuff in the grand scheme of things, the things that they are holding themselves accountable for are relatively trivial when you consider it, right? So Gin, yes, he gambled away a bunch of that money, but there is a real desire you feel with him to be a good father and to be a provider for his family and to be close to his daughter. In Hana's case,
I mean, it's even implied, by the way, that's what he's living out with the Miyuki character or whatever, right?
Yes.
That's what he's doing with this girl.
Yes. Yeah, with the new baby. With Hana, what was what she's running away from, which is the kind of, like, drag community that she was a part of and that was her job. She spilled a drink, or she threw a drink on a patron and thought that she had to be exiled for this, right? And ended up on the streets as a result of this. In Miyuki's case, it was because she stabbed her father with a knife because she thought her father got rid of her cat, which it doesn't seem like her father did. It's not explicit, but that's kind of the implication. And her father, I mean, she sees her father at several, like, points within this film, including, like, through a subway window at one point in time. And so what's so interesting about this film is it's not saying that the child or that Jesus is the one who is absolving people of their sins. First off, it's questioning the existence of sin as something that needs to be absolved by a supernatural power in the first place, because at the end of the day, the redemption comes from the miraculous meetings that they encounter with the people and the shame, as Richard put it earlier, that they're dealing with, right? Hannah is ashamed of the behavior that while she was working at the drag club, at the drag bar, basically, but the owner of that bar was concerned about her and immediately says, oh, no, it wasn't a big deal. Miyuki's father is clearly desperate to find his daughter. And even though he himself is a police investigator, hasn't been able to figure out where she is yet. And obviously,
remember, they even do an ad at one point in time saying, like, come home or whatever, like,
yes.
Yoki, come home or something. Right?
Yeah, like in the newspaper. And clearly, and like she calls him, and she can't face the shame of addressing what she's done. And Hana couldn't address the shame of doing what she's done. And Gian couldn't be a part of his daughter's life because of the shame of his gambling and drinking that kind of led him to not be able to provide properly for his family. And at the end of the day, the real barrier here is not even what they've done. It's not even the people that they've wronged. It's their own sense of shame that they can't overcome to ask for forgiveness, right? And at the end of the day, Jesus Christ's existence is fundamentally about the creation of forgiveness, right? And I think this is such a fucking good twist on the idea of Christmas, and probably could have only like been produced by somebody who wasn't part of a Christian culture, right? Because it takes the essence of it and then it twists it to be about human agency and human shortcomings, not in the way that sin is a shortcoming, but in the way that being ashamed of one's own actions hinders you to such a degree that you lose the most valuable parts of your life.
And you will also notice, I mean, you know, and again, you kind of summarized it really well. There is, you know, what does Christianity essentially teach? I mean, you know, and all religions ultimately, to a degree, is that the good life led is its own reward. There will always be some karmic comeback. And this movie, a lot of those happenstances, you will notice, they are good things happening to this trio of characters that are doing a good thing. They have done the ultimate thing, which is to take somebody that is vulnerable and is going to die without your intervention, and at great pains to themselves, they have sacrificed that to preserve the life of a child, which, you know, all societies, no matter where you are, the life of a child is sacrosanct. You sacrifice your life to protect children, so they can grow up and be adults and you know, potentially do the same. All societies are coded with that sensibility, and we do see a series of everybody gets what they want by the end. This is what I mean about it being a sweet movie. You know, everybody is nourished and satisfied on a spiritual level, and you can, sure, it could just be coincidences, but if they don't save that baby, the chain of coincidences don't occur.
Yep.
And so there is this implicit, you know, and this is again why it's a great Christmas movie. You think about that, what Scrooged did at the end when Bill Murray gives that terrible monologue about, you know, you can be the miracle. Everybody can make the miracle happen. You just have to want it. You just have to do it. You just have to put all of your sensibilities aside and lean into a loving act, which can be a little bit, you know, we're all a bit buttoned up and a bit stiff about it. Bill Murray just explicitly says that at the end of the film, and it fucking really undercuts the message, right? This movie doesn't explicitly say it, but just presents you with the story where it happens. And you can make of that what you will. But the best type of Christmas movie is one that presents you with the idea of, you know, just care about other people and just be willing to, yeah, you might be a bit silly, or you might have to sacrifice something, or it might be financially, you know, unrewarding, or, you know, whatever it is, but like dial into the humanity and the empathy, and it will be its own reward. And that's what this movie does. They get a series of Christmas miracles, not just one. Hannah is going to sacrifice her life to potentially save this child, and a freak gust of wind saves her. There's something in that, and yeah, like I said, I was unbelievably touched by the movie, because I think it really understands why people do these things. Because there is a righteousness to the behavior of the main characters, which are all ostensibly despised and wretched people by Japanese societal standards. And yet here they are, and they are morally pure. Yeah, wonderful.
And you see
No,
that.
wait. Go on.
You see that throughout the film too. It's not only, as we mentioned, them being physically beaten halfway to death, but also just constantly verbally abused for like sitting in a convenience store, right? And the hilarious thing about that is that even that verbal abuse that causes them to leave saves them from getting hit by an ambulance that immediately plows into right where they were sitting previously, right?
There's even a miracle, I feel like, because they're not explicit. I can never trust Western audiences to pick up and put any fact together. Spoiler, in esports, half the problem is you tell someone something, unless you then go, you do know he's saying this, they don't get it. So at the end of the movie, in case people missed it, I hope you do get that when they flash that lottery ticket from the old man's bag. They've won the fucking lottery, by the way, guys. Right. They're also, after the movie, rich, but that they just make that like semi-subtle, actually. Even though it's talked about, it's not like they don't hit you over the head with it. That's like one of the last things you see.
They see the TV in the hospital waiting room, I believe, where they're doing the lottery winners. Yes. And it was because Geen was helping out the other homeless man who was dying, who then gives him the bag that has the winning lottery ticket in it.
Literal bag. Exactly.
Yeah, the literal bag for the figurative bag as well. But yeah, he hands him the bag as he's dying, and Geen is like, being
why is there
kind
a Saudi
to him.
Arabian flag on this bag, man?
Enough about esports. But I mean, it is amazing that you see this moment. He doesn't look in the bag; he just holds on to it.
That's Christmas miracle, because it's like, look, we've saved them all. The families are all together. The babies are united. So at the end, you know what? They also get the money, so they're not homeless anymore. Which, by the way, that's how you know this movie was a success. Notice how we've pointed out what would actually be criticisms of the script and the way it plays out and what happens, but it keeps doing. It's not just Deus Ex Machina in the sense of like a scriptwriter couldn't get out of trouble, so he wrote. It's successfully doing Deus Ex Machinas. You're actually going, even though that is ridiculous. I love it. Yeah, what's the next one? And so when at the end they hit you with, and they won the lottery as well. You're like, yeah, why not? At this point, yeah, they should. And they deserve it. You know what I mean? You're on board at the end at that point.
But actually, I also think though that there's a profundity to the. It's a juxtaposition of they've won the lottery, but that's not the real wealth.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
They're too busy with the baby and all the family stuff. Yeah, exactly.
They're reunited with loved ones. They've got the baby. Everyone's safe. Everyone's happy. They've done these. The movie is like filled with all these like, despite what's happened to them, they've done all these good things, and it's like, yeah, and they won the lottery. And but that's not. They don't make a big deal about that. They're not popping corks because they got the real shit.
But I'll one up you, because we don't even know if they ever realize that they won the lottery, because it's literally a camera shot that zooms in like on the ticket in the bag, and there's a bunch of other lottery tickets in that bag. And were they paying attention enough to even know? Like, as far as they know, this could have just been the bag of trash, right? That they throw out later without ever having won. So the implication is, does it even matter that they won the lottery? Because the winning of the lottery is intentionally left ambiguous, because we're supposed to say, like, does it matter that they won it at the end?
Well, keep in mind as well, and this is very subtle, and whether it's intended or not, I don't know. But there is also like a presentation of wealth and opulence as being, it comes with its own downsides. You think about the Yakuza boss characters, other characters that are doing well, and maybe they don't ever open that bag. Maybe they don't win the lottery. It wouldn't matter. They've got their family back. They've got each other. The baby's safe. They have realized their own worth as people by the end. They have ultimately made peace with themselves for the transgressions they've supposedly committed. So yeah, the money is academic. Doesn't matter really what happens from there on. Their arc, the things they needed to be whole again, they've got, irrespective of the money. And so, I mean, again, I think it feels a little bit funny and tacked on, and Duncan's right. If they did this in like some American
wouldn't you? Like,
80s comedy.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, it's Brewster's fucking Millions,
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But everything, this movie is so deliberate in everything it does.
Oh, that's what I would nail it as, Richard. This is the thing. It would be saccharine. It's essentially the same act as could be in a Western movie. But the difference is, in the Western movie, I would see it as like, that's very cynically done, though, to make it. This feels earnest. It has like an earnestness behind it, even though it's silly happenstance happening, that like essentially lets you buy into it.
Yeah, and as I said, by the end, this is a classic. This is a feel good. It shouldn't be a feel good movie.
By the way,
man, you feel really good by the end. This
people,
is
ironically, if you like movies like It's a Wonderful Life, add this to your little list every Christmas. This needs to be in the rotation because you're going to like it every time, I guarantee. Yeah, and you're going to forget enough of it because of how complicated some of it is. You'll be able to rewatch it.
I'll also add, while some of the language used and some of the themes, they might not feel modern, there is one modern phenomenon that it was very prescient about. And there'll be people watching this episode that will get this immediately. The way we think of family has changed in modern times. You've probably got relatives you never talk to, and you've probably got people you spend every Christmas with that aren't blood relatives. They're your friends, but they're your family. You have chosen them to be your family. And whether it's just esports has kind of warped my perspective and how I've lived my life, I get that. I over Christmas, I have to reluctantly trudge back home. I'm not super tight with my parents. I don't even know my own dad. I haven't talked to him in fucking it was over 2 decades now. I ain't seen him since I was a kid. And I'm not really interested in that reconnection. There's nothing there, right? But I've got friends that I would fucking die for, that I spend all my major events with in my life. And I think the way we think of modern families has ultimately changed. And this movie is very prescient about that. This is a family unit of people that aren't related. They're only related by circumstance, and yet they love each other dearly. And no matter what they say about each other in that way that you do, sometimes, if you've got siblings, you'll identify with this. You might have a rivalry with a sibling, but you love them. You might say terrible things to them, but you love them. In a crisis, you come together. And I think the way that people live their lives now, I think that is becoming way more identifiable. I think we all have that. We have the family friend who maybe their relatives have passed on or they're estranged, and you don't want them to be alone because you love them dearly, so you have them round at Christmas. You're there for their birthdays. You're there for every occasion. They're part of your family now. And I don't think that was typical, 20, 25 years ago. But I think a lot of people can really resonate with that now. And I certainly do. And I said it, I'm going to keep using that word. This movie really touched me on like a very deep level. Like, it was like I was watching this film and like, don't cry, you're alone, stop. It's like, it's really sweet, and sweet can become cloying, but not when it's this earnest, not when it's this genuine. This movie means what it's saying, and you get that.
I mean, on that note, I would say this is actually, there's a couple of points here. One is on that last point Richard just said there, this is actually something I learned in life itself through experience, which is the real problem with things like emotional gestures or trying to make like some deep point to someone is they've been commodified, and people have said I love you 1 million times to people they didn't love, and so as a result you start to get jaded and think, well, what does it even mean? But you don't realize that, like I said earlier about the concept of intent, when someone says those same words with intent behind it and you know it's real, then all of a sudden the power is instantly back. It's like, and suddenly it becomes a vital gesture, a show of force in some way that you just wouldn't get otherwise. So I also think like that's another thing I would say about this film is I just feel like people will miss that it is a film that tries to say something deep, like I say, about what the meaning of family is. Like, for example, I would say in the modern day, people to try and seem cool with their persona online, what's the angle everyone takes? It's the idea that you are an island. Oh, I don't care what people think about me. I'm just wearing whatever I want. Who cares what other people think? We all care what other people think. We all want to be liked and have it. And what this movie shows you as well is that everyone, through whatever means, needs family. It's somehow hard-coded in us that we need people to support us, people, by the way, people we can support. We need all these things to kind of be whole as a human. Actually, the human alone, the joke is it's not an isolated unit. The unit is a bigger thing and the human has to be a part of it. And that's one of the things I think this movie very well shows you, because everyone in this film, everyone needs the other people. The joke is even the people who, like the dad who's the kids, right? They're still thinking about the kid the whole time. They're living a normal life at that point in time. So there is something missing if you don't have some family element. That's actually why, Richard, I was wondering what you were going to think about this film, because if people don't know, one, you're actually quite well known for being someone where over Christmas sometimes you might be on your own. So I wondered how you'd feel about that angle. Obviously, you've said yourself one of the reasons why you've embraced certain people in esports is you were trying to make your own sort of makeshift family to some degree, right?
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, I'm like some deranged anti-natalist, so I'm on that. But you know, I mean, like for real, it's like, yeah, you know, like the vibe of this movie, the important thing and the thing that resonates, I think that separates it from other movies that might explore these themes, is that you will see a lot of movies that talk about the importance of being loved. Right, and yeah, you need to be loved. People want to be loved. They want to be liked. They want to fit in. They want to belong. They want to support, apparatus around them. What's harder to explore is how important it is to love and to be capable of loving and to have someone that you pour love into. And like, you know, that if you don't have that in your life, that's very damaging. And it's hard for people that maybe become estranged from families, or, you know, maybe aren't even the most social. You know, maybe they find making friends difficult, or they find it hard to open up. It's very damaging for people like that to not have somebody that you can put your love into. And so, yeah, this is what this movie absolutely nails, like on a humane level, that these people don't just want to be loved. It's not a story about a wacky trio of homeless people trying to get their status back in society. It's that they all need to love other people. And the great shame and pain that they're feeling is their inability to do that with the people society designates that they were meant to do it with. They all have that in common. And to understand that, I mean, what a brilliant writer to get that.
That's such a deep point, and it's so poignant. Yeah.
I really just think this film is like a masterpiece. Like, if you told me that this film was the result of Satoshi Kon being dared to make a feel-good Christmas movie about, and it must contain the following: homeless, LGBT community, prostitutes, the Yakuza, suicide, baby theft. Like, this doesn't sound real. Like, this movie is just so wildly creative. And I don't know how it actually could have done a more sympathetic job of handling every single one of these things.
Yes.
Like, This movie is just so
It's also such a
amazingly on
generous
point.
film as well, right, Monty? Because the joke is they even make the characters who are in theory the badder elements. Some of them even have a humanity to them, or they're not quite as bad. Like the user guy obviously isn't that bad as you think he's going to initially. Yeah, they're such a generous. It's so magnanimous with the characters, man.
The immigrant assassin
Which
who
is the
tries.
idea is Christmas. That's what Christmas is about, isn't it? It's about everyone deserves to have Christmas. Is the idea, right?
The immigrant assassin who tries to kill the Yakuza boss.
Yes.
Remember?
Brings them to the milk and that. Yeah, exactly.
Miyuki ends up at his house, and his wife is giving breast milk to the baby that they found. Like what the fuck, man? Like, she literally got kidnapped by this guy from the scene, taken to this house, and now his family is taking care of this baby. He just says in Spanish
to her, do you want milk, or he needs milk or something, right? Yeah, and he takes it to the mum who's lactating, which is ridiculous, but whatever. So we forgive everything in this film. As this movie showed you, we are like the people in the film. We can forgive everything by the end. So for the right reasons, you can forgive everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, obviously we need to wrap it up. So I mean, I'm not. Talking about my own experience with this film, I'm not somebody that likes anime, although, and we barely even talked about the animation. The animation is superb. Yep, and the look and feel of this movie is brilliant. And you were absolutely right about the color palette, Duncan. That is deliberately, grays and browns and dark colors. And then when the freak gust of wind comes in for the final miracle, and then obviously the final scenes in the hospital, super bright all of a sudden.
Yes.
There is a literal light that has been injected into the movie. So it's a beautiful movie to look at. The animation is top tier, and holds up even by modern standards of animation. But for me, it's like I said, I went into this movie remembering something I watched in my 20s, where it was kind of like, it was a silly comedy film that had a particular sweetness to it, but probably for the jaded, old, cynical version of Richard that's just been through too much, it's gonna bounce off me like a rubber ball. And I was like, God, fuck Christopher for making me watch an anime. Within 30 minutes into the movie, I was so enthralled and riveted and invested. And as I said, by the end, like genuine welling up, tears of joy. Like, I'm glad that chick didn't fucking ice herself and that was all going to be okay. And the baby's back and Miyuki gets the family. I didn't give a fuck about that lottery ticket.
The way you could just be an absolute cunt is you just remake this film, but then none of those good things happen at the end, Richard. Like, she does kill herself. It's just the darkest ending ever. I'd ruin you.
Which is really funny because, as guys who watch the stream will know, I've been playing through Red Dead Redemption 2, which has obviously a super sad ending, and because I'm like trying to anchor my brain to like the concept of moving and change.
Okay.
And this, I'm never gonna, because moving's such a strange time in your life. You're literally opening a new chapter. Now this is going to be in there too. This kind of like wonderfully optimistic, and it was the perfect antidote. I don't know what to say. It's just a beautiful film. Like, I gushed over It's a Wonderful Life. It would be absolutely dreadful of me to not do the same over this film, because the warm fuzzy feeling by the end, dabbing your eyes, just a bit of dust, brilliant. I mean, just a wonderful film, and it just makes me really sad that Satoshi Kon.
Yeah, that's one of the saddest parts.
Dude,
what if he had 20 more years of movies?
What if he was 40 when he died? Like, what if he had 40 more years of movies, right? Like, what if he had...
And here's the killer, Monty. Think about it, the time period when he gets all this Western acclaim is when he's gone.
I know.
Now he would have had like the Tarantino in, as it were, like all those people like Wong Kar-wai had, to be like the Hollywood. He could have actually done like anything after this. Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of, if you think about Satoshi Kon's story and you think about this movie, that's where the dark element is. Yeah, because while this movie makes you feel good, real life is kind of just remorselessly cruel.
Yes.
And if you love this, and I don't know how you could watch this movie and not love it, it doesn't take a lot of effort to watch the rest of Satoshi Kon's movies because he only did a handful as a director. So he literally did Perfect Blue, Millennium Actress, Tokyo Godfathers, and Paprika. So he did 4 films, and he did one 13-episode anime series called Paranoia Agent. All of them are bangers, guys. All of them. It's all super fucking good. So I would encourage you to go watch it.
And I've never watched Paranoia Agent, but when I get settled in the new place, first thing I'm gonna do.
Dude, Paranoia Agent is great.
this movie and researching Satoshi Kon's interviews. I even left out that, by the way, when he died, Darren Aronofsky was the guy who did his eulogy. This is how influential this guy is. And so I want to absorb everything he's done, even tangentially. This was a masterpiece movie. I remember his other works being incredible and thought-provoking, like Paprika I talked about at the start. I'm just devastated that it's going to be a very short rabbit hole to go down because he was taken way too soon.
Yeah, as I said, I actually think the sleeper one people haven't seen is Millennium Actress. That's one where that movie destroys me. That's incredibly heavy, but it's an amazing movie. I think, again, so poignant. So what I would say on this one is, this is actually one of my picks. I don't often do picks. If I do, I make sure that I'm telling you, because here's the thing. I did this, guys, to trick you all, because you all think you know anime, to watch this movie, because one, it's a banger Christmas movie. Like, it's just, like, the joke is, this is contender for the best Christmas movie of all the ones we've done, and we picked some, one of the essential classics of all time. It's right up there. And then also, I'll throw this in there. Like I say, your idea of what you think anime is, you're the one who's going like, but when in Minoko he saw the great forest spirit, that's like me being weirdly bullied at high school in America, and I'm weird like a Japanese. No, you're not at all. That's all just some shit in your head. None of that was on screen. The difference is, this is all here. This is real, and you might actually relate to this in your real life. Surely you know someone who's estranged from their family. You know someone who lost their child. You know someone who got in a gambling debt. You know someone who's home. Surely you know, I feel like everyone's going to relate to the human element of this. And the joke is, if you like anime, you're going to like it, maybe not know this was one. And if you don't, you're going to go, there are, like I say, there are some that can sort of flaunt the silly things of the genre and be really great.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also, weirdly, even though it's a Japanese movie, maybe the most Christian Christmas movie.
Yeah, he also nailed the Christian angle, didn't he? Yeah.
If you think about the other movies we did, there's nothing Christian about the other movies. There's a lot that's like Christian symbolism in this.
It's a Wonderful Life does open up with with God and Saint Peter talking.
It does end with God bless us all, and Christmas Carol too.
but I'll agree in terms of just like what this movie nails about it's the ethos of the perfected version of Christianity, and indeed it is central to sort of almost every ideology. Really is like, just don't be horrible to other human beings. But yeah, I think in terms of we didn't really get into it, and there's not time now, but there's probably something there with the child and Jesus, and
sure,
there's probably something there. Probably someone's written an incredible essay about that.
No doubt. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. In terms of all the movies we watched, like, I'm always going to have a soft spot for It's a Wonderful Life. And I don't know if it's just like the time of my life and where I'm at and things I've gone through subsequently. I'll be rewatching this film for sure. It will go into the I Need to Cry rotation. Tub of ice cream, full bitch made on a sofa, feel good tears movie.
That's the film festival people want to see online.
It's just
make sure you do your mascara before you start watching the films. Obviously,
leave Britney alone. There's a boomer meme, but no, it's just fucking great. Just a really feel good movie, man. Like it like when you have like a fucking good meal or a nice cup of tea after a long day, or a opulent nice scotch. It's like that. It just fucking fills you up, man. It just warms your heart. It's just great. Just a beautiful film.
All right. Well, that concludes our Christmas arc for this year. There's plenty more Christmas movies left for subsequent years if we choose to go down this rabbit hole again. Again, we are going to be doing heist movies and what is undoubtedly going to be an egregiously long episode on Heat. next week. So strap in. The Heat episode, which we all knew was going to come at some point in this show's history, is now upon us. So definitely watch Heat. It's incredible. You will enjoy the ludicrously in-depth conversation about that film once you see the episode. Till then.
Is Heat a Christmas movie?
Oh, God. Goodbye.